Close your eyes and imagine a place where you can't escape nature, a place situated precariously in the middle of the North Atlantic, where sunlight on the winter solstice lasts for only a little over 5 hours, where storms can arrive at any moment with winds exceeding 100 miles per hour, and where isolation is not a psychological state, it is a geographical reality. Logically speaking, this is a place that almost shouldn't be inhabited, but the truth always contains paradoxes. Welcome to the Faroe Islands, a tiny, autonomous region of less than 1,400 square kilometers within the Kingdom of Denmark. Here, over 54,000 people are not just existing, they have built a modern maritime economy, an unassimilated culture, and an astonishingly prosperous community. In the following minutes of this video, you will realize a truth that overturns all conventional definitions of life. Don't ask yourself if you can endure the harshness of this place. Ask yourself a more difficult question. Are you willing to give up a life of comfort and many choices in exchange for a place that forces you to live more authentically, more deeply, and gives you the deepest sense of belonging? But before we can understand why people choose to stay, we must first confront the first thing that strikes the eyes of the settlers in this land. Because in the Faroe Islands, nature has never been willing to retreat to a mere backdrop. It is a living character, always demanding its right to speak. In most parts of the world, geography is merely a static foundation upon which people build their lives. But in the Faroe Islands, geography is destiny, and nature here is an autocratic god. In modern cities, the weather is something you can leisurely observe through a window. But on this archipelago, the locals have a saying: if you don't like the weather right now, just wait 5 minutes. It's not a joke. It's a rule of survival. The wind here doesn't just blow, it batters. The rain here doesn't fall from above, it comes from all directions. The living spaces of the Faroe Islands were not created by human arrangement. They were constrained by the limitations of nature. Steep cliffs made villages small and humble. Narrow valleys turned sunlight into a luxury, especially when winter arrived, bringing with it long, seemingly endless nights. In the Faroe Islands, the weather isn't something you check the forecast to decide what jacket to wear this morning. It's what determines whether your day will actually unfold. Human schedules are forced to bow to the storm's schedule. Living here is like voluntarily participating in a grueling test every day. This place strips away all the comforts of the modern world to ask its inhabitants a cruel question: can you endure this darkness? Are you willing to abandon the illusion that humans can control everything? Can you find any meaning in a place that has absolutely no intention of pampering you? Any single individual would easily be crushed by such a force. Survival on the edge of this world has never been a solitary endeavor. When faced with a power too great to contend with alone, the people of the Faroe Islands have only one choice: to turn their backs on the storm and turn to each other. In bustling cities, crowds often promise a vibrant life. However, in large cities, you can live alongside thousands of people for decades without ever knowing their names. You have the right to be invisible. In the Faroe Islands, that's almost impossible. Isolation here isn't a vague psychological state. It's a physical distance, measured in nautical miles and treacherous mountain passes. When a storm hits and cuts off all ferry and helicopter access for days on end, geographical distance suddenly becomes a wall of confinement. But it was within this confinement that a miraculous reversal of human history occurred. Isolation did not destroy communities. On the contrary, it made them more essential than ever. Neighbors were no longer just people living next to each other by chance. They became part of a survival system. They share everything from food supplies and weather information to responsibilities for caring for the elderly and young children. Community is the oldest and most sophisticated survival technology the Faroe Islands possess, helping them keep their spirits from being swallowed by the darkness of winter. Extreme isolation doesn't make people disappear from each other. It makes them more apparent. But it would be dishonest to romanticize this bond. Belonging always comes with an invisible contract. In a village of only a few dozen people, the warmth of community sometimes comes at the cost of personal space. Your family history, your mistakes, your joys and sorrows, it's all known. In the Faroe Islands, you're always supported when you stumble, but it's also very difficult to quietly disappear. You're held accountable for your own existence. A close-knit community is the foundation for these people's survival over the centuries. However, relying solely on each other would be insufficient to withstand such a harsh natural environment. To truly make this place home, they need more than just the support of their fellow humans. They must also learn to compromise with the land, rocks, grass, and wind in the most peculiar way. What would you do living on a land with virtually no forest trees? For centuries, due to constant storms and shallow soil, wood on this archipelago has been an extremely rare resource, mostly consisting of tree trunks drifting ashore from other continents. When the most basic materials for survival are scarce, human instinct is often to find ways to fight against or adapt to nature. But the ancient Norse settlers of the Faroe Islands chose a different path. Instead of confronting the enemy, they looked down at their feet. They used the earth and grass, the only things they had available, to shelter themselves. The grass-roofed houses are not a decorative architectural feature to please tourists. They are a resilient survival technology that has stood the test of time for over 1,000 years. The intricate network of roots of the grass and soil forms a massive weight, firmly securing the roof and preventing it from being blown away by the storm. It's a perfect insulating shield, retaining precious warmth in winter and preventing the biting cold rain from seeping inside. In the Faroe Islands, adaptation doesn't mean surrender. Adaptation is the ability to confront scarcity and transform those limitations into solutions for survival. The architecture here is no longer a rigid, lifeless block of material. It is a living organism. The house breathes with the land, absorbing rainwater and nurturing life right above people's heads. In many parts of the world, the home is something people proudly build to separate themselves from nature. But in the Faroe Islands, the home is like a silent agreement. People are granted shelter with one condition. They must never forget that they are living in the territory of wind, rocks, and the open sea. But a community cannot simply survive by sheltering under roofs and waiting for the storm to pass. For a harsh land to truly become home, people need something that takes root deeper than the grass on the roof. They need memory. And in the Faroe Islands, that memory doesn't lie dormant in books stored on shelves. It lies in the sounds uttered each day and in the embraces that have connected people for centuries. A community doesn't just die when its people leave their homeland. It truly disappears when people no longer name the world in their own language. Faroe is one of the world's smallest official languages, with only about 80,000 speakers globally. A direct descendant of an ancient Viking Norse language, it could easily have been crushed and assimilated by larger, more powerful languages in the age of globalization. But the Faroe Islands language is not an artifact displayed in a glass case. In this land, speaking a small language is an act of proud resistance. They choose not to be assimilated. A language only truly survives when it is used by young people to text, to program websites, to debate, to love, and to dream about the future. And if language is the way memories are expressed in words, then in this isolated archipelago, there is a kind of memory that is conveyed through breath and bodily movements. In many parts of the world, history lies dormant in textbooks. But in the Faroe Islands, history emerges, takes your hand, draws you into a circle, and compels you to join in. The Faroese chain dance has existed uninterrupted for over 800 years. The same formations, the same stories of ancient heroes. That circle is not merely an artistic dance. It is a perfect social structure encoded by the body. Within that circle, there is no leader, no class boundaries. All are equal. As hands intertwine, the previous generation passes on its heartbeat to the next. A small society reminds itself of a truth of survival. Amidst the invisible, raging ocean out there, no one is left behind. Looking at the thatched roofs and the dancing circles, you could easily mistake the Faroe Islands for a living museum, a land that refuses to grow and is forgotten by time. But the reality is a paradox that deceives all preconceptions. This place clings to its past, not to escape the present, but to carry that entire identity, hurtling at the speed of light into an uncertain future. In the minds of many, remoteness is often synonymous with backwardness. Small islands at the edge of the world are often destined for oblivion. But the Faroe Islands defy that fate. They don't offer a choice between tradition and modernity. They force the two to coexist under one roof. You're in a place where almost 100% of households have broadband fiber optic internet access. A place where a data analyst can work for a multinational corporation right in the middle of a village with only 50 residents. In a land where the terrain is jagged by cliffs and ravines, infrastructure isn't just a luxury, it's the lifeblood. They are not defeated by distance. Tunnels piercing through mountains, underwater routes beneath the open sea, and ferries enduring storms, all bear witness to one truth. The Faroe Islands are not trapped in the past. Oddly enough, they are carrying their entire past into the future. However, high-speed internet or magnificent tunnels cannot sustain a person's life on their own. To convince a 22-year-old to stay in a quiet village when the whole world of temptations is contained within his phone screen, his homeland cannot be just about identity. His homeland must provide him with a real livelihood. And in the Faroe Islands, all paths to livelihood lead to one place, the ocean. The sea here isn't just for strolling and admiring. It's the second central figure shaping the fate of this archipelago. Don't let the tranquil appearance of the villages fool you, for this is the heart of a vast maritime economy. Over 90% of the archipelago's export value comes from seafood. They don't just fish using traditional methods. They apply oceanography, biotechnology, and cold chain logistics to global standards. The coldest and harshest waters become the perfect breeding ground for producing some of the world's highest quality salmon. The sea gives them food. The sea gives them wealth. The sea gives them a reason to be proud to stay. But the sea is also a double-edged sword. It sustains humanity, but it is also ready to take lives. It creates prosperity, but it is also a vast isolating boundary that keeps them confined from the rest of the continent. The Faroe Islands' economy is inextricably linked to the sea, meaning their very survival hangs precariously on the edge of natural changes. The sea reminds the Faroese people of a harsh and profound lesson every day. The riches of nature are never inexhaustible. How can they live off the sea without depleting it? The very existence of this archipelago depends on them never forgetting humility. The economy creates jobs. Culture creates identity. Infrastructure creates convenience. But for a young generation born under this bleak sky, is that enough to extinguish their yearning to see a wider world beyond the ocean? For a young person born in the Faroe Islands, home is both a solid foundation and a narrow boundary. The world across the ocean beckons with the dazzling lights of Copenhagen, London, or Oslo. There are grand universities, endless career paths, and above all, there is the freedom of invisibility. Anonymity that a village of 50 could never offer them. The real question here isn't why they leave, rather it's how can a small community accept its children leaving yet still maintain a strong enough connection so that one day they'll want to return. For young Faroe people, leaving is never a betrayal. Sometimes it's the only way for them to step back, gaze at their homeland from afar, and ask themselves where they truly belong. Big cities offer people countless choices, but over time, many of them realize a bitter truth. Many choices don't automatically create meaning, and absolute anonymity is sometimes just another name for loneliness. So, they return home. They returned home in their 30s and 40s. They brought with them university degrees, professional skills, and an international perspective. They didn't return because they failed in the outside world. They returned because they had experienced enough of the vastness of the world to understand the value of connection. When they were young, they left to find freedom. As adults, they returned because they understood that freedom is not just the ability to escape. Sometimes, the greatest freedom a person can have is the right to choose where they belong once again. But don't let romance fool you. The Faroe Islands are not a promised land for everyone. They will reject those seeking an easy, comfortable life. They will suffocate those yearning to escape personal responsibilities or those who cannot tolerate the absence of bustling shopping centers. Belonging to a place means you're supported when the storms come. But it also means you're always seen, always remembered, always expected of. You're held back by the very same threads that saved you from loneliness. In a modern world obsessed with speed, convenience, and endless choices, the Faroe Islands stand as a stark reminder. These islands teach us that the meaning of life doesn't necessarily come from having more. Sometimes it comes from choosing less, but living that choice more fully. Limitations don't diminish their lives. They help them see what truly matters. And in the Faroe Islands, one realizes that light doesn't always come from the blazing sun. Sometimes, on the darkest winter solstice nights, light comes from a neighbor's window. Their history isn't a straight line of being left behind. It's a story of circles, connecting arms, cycles of life leaving and returning, and the rotation of memories passed down from generation to generation. So, going back to the original question, are you willing to give up everything to come and live here? Perhaps the answer doesn't lie in whether you can withstand the cold, the storms, or the isolation. Because home isn't necessarily the easiest place to live. Home can be a place that needs your presence, a place where you can't live superficially, a place you choose not just because of what it gives you, but because of what kind of person it demands of you. The Faroe Islands don't promise you an easy life. They promise something far rarer, a life that isn't diluted. And perhaps that's why 54,000 people still proudly call this place home.